Okay, Chair, you're ready to go.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this remote meeting. Just turn my speaker down.
It's fresh, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Can I remind everyone to keep their microphones on mute unless speaking, and only use the chat function for MIS, i.e. may I speak, and voting. My name is Councillor Lisa O'Brien, and I am Chairman of Council. Can I ask Joe to call out the roll call and present any apologies? Thank you. Joe.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Rob Appleyard. I think we'll come back. Councillor Tim Ball.
Here.
Councillor Sarah Bevan.
Present.
Colin Blackburn.
Present.
Alison Bourne.
I'm here. Hello.
Shelley Bromley.
Present.
Neil Butters.
Present.
Vic Clark.
Present.
Sue Craig.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Paul Crossley. Jerry Curran.
Present.
Chris Dando.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Jess David. Tom Davies.
Present.
Sally Davis.
Present.
Doug Deacon.
Present.
Winston Duguid.
Present.
Mark Elliott.
Present.
Michael Evans.
Present.
Andy Furs. Maybe joining in a minute. Kevin Guy.
Present.
Alan Hale.
Present.
Liz Hardman.
Present.
Steve Hedges.
Present.
Joel Hurst.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Lucy Hodge. Duncan Hounsell.
Present.
Sean Hughes.
Present.
Dr. Jackson.
Present.
Grant Johnson.
Present, if a little hot.
Noted. Dr. Kumar.
Present, ma'am.
Al McPhee.
Present.
Ruth Malloy.
Present.
Paul May.
Present.
Matt McCabe.
Present.
Sarah Moore.
Present.
Robin Moss.
Present.
Paul Myers.
Present.
Lisa O'Brien.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Michelle O'Doherty. Barrett Pancania. I understand he might join late if he's not here at the moment. June Player.
Present.
Vic Pritchard.
Present.
Amanda Rigby.
Present.
Dina Romero.
Present. My internet's a bit iffy, so I might be a little bit Dalek-y. It's not intentional.
Okay. Mark Roper.
Present.
Richard Samuel.
Present.
Bruce Shern.
Present.
Brian Simmons.
Present.
Alistair Singleton.
Present.
Sean Stevenson McGall.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Andy Waite. Karen Walker.
Present.
Sarah Warren.
Present.
Karen Warrington.
Present.
Chris Watt.
Present.
Ryan Wills.
Present.
David Wood.
Present.
Joanna Wright.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any declarations of interest, please?
None notified to me, but councillors may wish to declare now if they have any that they haven't already thought of.
Can I declare, please?
Yes,
Councillor Kumar.
Yeah, because I can see that there are two motions today, one on Commonwealth and other on a memorial for COVID-related issues. And I do not know whether it is really directly I have any interest or not, but just to say that I come from a Commonwealth country originally, and many of my friends and family members have been Commonwealth veterans. And about the COVID thing, I lost my mother-in-law this year, and this had some relationship with long COVID problems. So if you are going to build a memorial or something, these are two of my interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kumar.
thank you.
Any other declarations of interest? No? Okay. Due to the desire to retain a level of social distancing so soon after restrictions have lifted, we are holding this informal virtual council meeting to enable all councillors to take part. The comments and indicative decisions from this meeting will help inform the physically reduced quorum decision-making meeting tomorrow on the 22nd of July 2021. We will review this approach for any future council meetings in line with government and health advice and guidance at that time. We will be having a 5-minute break every hour to give you a comfort break from your screen. And I would like at this stage to call on Councillor Guy to provide a brief COVID update.
Really?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good evening, everybody. I would like to repeat a statement that I made last night at Cabinet about the impact of the corona pandemic on the community and our council, and on our council's approach to it. Councillor Richard Samuel provided detail in last night's Cabinet, but at a time when central government's messages is all about freedom and the end of the dark days, I have to warn you that we are far from through the worst of the effects of this crisis. And indeed, I expect things to get significantly worse before we can expect them to see real signs of improvement. As you know, the levels of infection within the Bath and North East Somerset area continue to rise and are now higher than the general rate in England and within the South West region. The impacts of this and the associated strain from the number of local people receiving messages from the NHS app to self-isolate are adding intense pressure to the essential services provided by the council and by our emergency services. All our key services are now under unprecedented strain, and some, I must be honest, are at breaking point. But at this point, I want to pay tribute to our wonderful staff who are facing immense challenges every day and who are going about their jobs with calm professionalism and incredible dedication, and who continue to deliver awesome levels of service to our communities. Will Godfrey and his team are doing a magnificent job, and we all owe them a huge debt of gratitude. I couldn't be prouder to be leader of this council at this difficult time. Thank you very much for all that you're doing. I can't promise that we will be able to maintain all of our services at regular levels through the months to come. Some of our neighbouring councils are already suspending their refuse services, and other services face great difficulties. But I continue to promise you this: the commitment of this council to deliver to its residents, whatever the challenges, remains undimmed. Our team remains determined to continue to deliver the vast and the best of its ability. Yesterday, you know, the government dropped the final rules and controls to impose people to wear face masks in the dangers of the COVID-19 pandemic. We as the council have received and reviewed the situation carefully, and driven by the public health advice and by the wishes of our staff and sound common sense, we will remain to wear masks in all of our buildings. Accordingly, we have decided that it is both prudent and proper to keep some measures in place in all council properties, such as the Guildhall, our offices, and our visitor attractions. We ask people coming to these premises to continue to wear masks and/or face coverings unless you have medical reasons to do not. and to continue to wear them when moving around our buildings. We want people, whether colleagues or visitors, to feel both safe and confident in our places of work and to show each other the respect and consideration which the last 16 months have shown that we are all capable of doing. So I ask everyone, please continue to make these small sacrifices for the common good of us all. I will wear my mask to keep you safe, and I ask you to extend the same courtesy and care to others, so that we as a community can come through these dark days together and look forward with confidence to better times and to a soundly and scientifically based freedoms in the future. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Moss, we're not taking questions at the moment, so I'm ignoring your MIS for the moment. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. We have 3 registered public statements for today's meeting. I would remind group leaders that factual questions on statements should only be seeking brief answers. They should be factual, not inviting further points. So we call, to begin with, David Withdrawal. David.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just make a few points. First of all, just got to echo what the Leader of the Council said about wearing face coverings, particularly on public transport, and also what the Metro Mayor has said about to be very safe. And then make the other points on transportation, and to say I'm becoming a bit concerned that with buses now going across the West of England Combined Authority and the Metro Mayor, we have to produce a bus plan by October for Bath and for North East Bath and North East Somerset as part of the West of England Combined Authority, along with North Somerset. That's a statutory plan that the government expects to be produced for Baroness Fear, the buses minister. Now, that includes a considerable amount of cooperation with Wiltshire Council and Somerset Council to make sure we've got the bus links into the city and the city region. But I've joined a number of Zoom meetings in the last few weeks before I became ill, where they were talking about having meetings with the community, and Dorset's organised that, so has Somerset, and Wiltshire County Council, Wiltshire Council now is also doing that. I'm yet to see any of those meetings in Bath, Bristol, Weston-super-Mare, Kingswood. And I just feel that if we don't show the Secretary of State, Grant Shapps, that we've actually done public consultation and proper public consultation, that we could have the money reduced. And that is worrying me, because from September till April next year, the government grant will be £226 million in England to top up the money that's paid to the bus operators. And then we go over to this new system, which is the bus service recovery plan, and that has to be agreed with the West England Combined Authority. So really urging the Leader of the Council and the transport executive members in the council to really push this with West England Combined Authority and make sure we produce this plan and we get the money and the bus services, the people of Bath. After all, we can talk about reducing air quality, producing better air quality, reducing traffic congestion in the city or in Keynsham or in Radstock or in Somerset. But if we haven't got the alternatives of the bus services in place, we can walk and cycle, but walking and cycling is not going to replace good quality public transport. So I really urge again that this really needs to be top of the agenda, and we should really be trying to do something, even if it means we're trying to have meetings on Zoom during August with key stakeholders to make sure the plan's running in the right direction, not just for Bath, but for the surrounding area, particularly for places like Keynsham, Radstock and Midsummer Norton as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Withdrawal.
And thank you, David, for your time. I don't have any practical questions, but as per normal, your contribution is always appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard. Can you demute, please?
Yes, David, I do have some questions to put to you. You referred to a statutory plan that's been guided by WECA and no meetings to date. And you've stressed the importance of the bus service across not only our neighbouring authorities, but across the wider areas of Bath and North East Somerset, particularly the rural areas. And the current plans that I've seen from WECA include no services whatsoever in the Chew Valley. When you attend those meetings, because you're more than likely to, can you ensure that the Chew Valley is included?
I'm deeply concerned with what I've learned about the Chew Valley and the 672. The reduction is in a grant from North Somerset Council, and it appears to be £40,000. It might be more, but it intends to go back to 4 buses a day between the Chew Valley, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and Bristol City Centre in Bedminster. It's really not acceptable for a population in Chew Magna. And this is the reason.
Answer the question, please.
Yep, I was going to say this is the reason, Chair, why we've got to get this bus back better plan right for the government. It really is.
Thank you, David.
Councillor Walker.
Hello, David. Thank you for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Hi, David. No factual questions.
Thank you. Next, thank you, David, very much. Could you now move to YouTube and off Zoom? Thank you. We now move to Dave Andrews. Can we have Dave Andrews to speak, please? Do we have Dave Andrews at the meeting?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Right, would you like to speak?
Yes. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to get over to today the idea that simply clamping down on car traffic in Bath using low traffic networks and other methods, whilst a very good idea in principle for climate, environment and health reasons, will overall have a detrimental effect on Bath's economy and general well-being unless an alternative form of transport is provided that is acceptable to motorists, because it's motorists that cause the problems. There is irrefutable, I stress this, irrefutable evidence demonstrated by numerous UK city failures that for technical and economic reasons, a bus service is simply not able to provide an acceptable alternative to motorists. The only technical solution that has proven to be attractive to motorists and therefore reduce congestion, pollution and all the other damage from cars in 6 or so other cities has been to reinstall trams, which for various reasons that are well understood by engineers can offer a service acceptable to motorists. This is because they are fast, comfortable, not cramped, spacious, have a higher frequency, rapid boarding, much higher capacity, and more prestigious than buses, and are in fact cheaper. This may surprise you, they're cheaper per passenger kilometre in the long term. So typically 30 to 40% of tram users are ex-car drivers, and this number is close to zero for buses. This is why trams work to cut congestion, pollution and energy. So if cars are simply restrained, as what we appear to be doing now by LTNs and cutting parking, blah, 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 then drivers will simply go elsewhere, either shopping online or driving to other cities. And this will continue to cause the gradual commercial decline of Bath and the general degradation of the pleasure and amenity of living here. Therefore, whilst it may well take 10 years to get our first tram, it is essential to start planning now on the assumption that we'll be using them and going through the complicated process of making that happen. Otherwise, in another 10 years' time, we'll still be wringing our hands and gnashing our teeth and we haven't got nowhere. So I will summarise by saying that electric trams, in other words, on the other hand, do not need overhead wires. They produce zero pollution at the point of use and have a much, much lower energy consumption. So we therefore urge the council to pressure, well, first of all, agree with this thesis, and then to pressure WECA to build the first line, which will be a tram line running from Bristol to Bath, running through to Bath Eastern, and also support our proposals for trams from Radstock and Chippenham. And above all, it is essential to resist the pressure to build a cheap bus service that has been proven numerous times in other cities not to work. Thank you.
Thank you, David Andrews. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll defer my factual question to Councillor Warren, please.
Councillor Warren?
Yep. Okay. I wondered if Dave is aware that the West of England Combined Authority will be consulting this summer on a mass transit project that everyone can contribute to.
Yes, but in my cynical opinion, this would be no more than telling us what they've decided to do and then not paying much attention. I mean, very surprised they haven't bothered to consult us. I am aware.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard. Can you unmute Councillor Pritchard?
That was quite good.
Right, I'll try again. Dave, you're not obviously impressed with the idea of LTNs. If the money was to be diverted for LTNs to initiate a tram service, would that be sufficient to have an impression on a contribution to trams in central Bath?
No, I'm sure that a tram is much more expensive. I mean, I'm not against LTNs. You need to restrict cars in Bath, but
I'm going to stop you there because, frankly, that was not sufficiently of a factual question. I don't believe you discussed costs in your statement, so I'm going to stop you there. Councillor Walker.
Yes, firstly, I'd like to thank Dave for his many emails I've received regarding trams over the last few years. So I just wanted you to clarify, you've mentioned trams coming from Mudstock. Would you envisage this coming through Peasdown? So I only need a yes or no answer to this.
Yes.
Thank you.
They got quite capable of taking that route.
Oh,
no.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thanks for the statements. Are you aware of any work that has been done on how trams will be able to go over the historic vaults that underlie much of Bath city centre?
Yes, if you put that sort of question into Google and end it with Bath trams, put like bearing pressure under tram tracks in Bath, you'll find some diagrams there which show that the pressure from a tram wheel on a beam is much less than the pressure from the rear axle of a bus. And it's the rear axle of buses, whether I'm not against buses, but I just face the facts, it's the rear axle pressure that is damaging the vaults and does all the tearing up of the roads, in fact. So trams would alleviate that problem and actually strengthen the vaults.
Thank you very much, Dave. Can you now join via YouTube? And we move on to John Mountford, please. John Mountford.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, John.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to address the council. Mine is a small family with a huge investment in the future, just one grandchild. Having him in my life gives special meaning to all I do. You appreciate the responsibility that securing a bright future for all our young people brings with it. This makes me appreciate the time, energy and commitment that you bring to your role as custodians of our local democracy. If we can make that a secure reality, we're on the right track. The world is changing, but you already know that. With change come challenges. You know that too. We are a species designed to resist all change that threatens to challenge our status or unsettle our lives. For too long, we have lived as if the world were made for man. It never occurred to us to think otherwise. A long time ago, we decided that our future lay in exploiting the Earth's resources. We set about doing that, and look at all we've achieved. But we committed ourselves with such dedication to our own development that we lost sight of whether there was a bigger picture. We have since discovered to our cost that there was. We set in motion a chain of developments that have almost brought our precious home to ruin. Now, even it is suffering because of the choices we made and continue to make. We dedicated to delegate authority to others so that we could continue to concentrate on our immediate needs. But that choice has not distributed its dividends equally. Rich and powerful individuals and organizations emerged, often in the background while we were busy. They took great liberties with our future for their gain. The bulk of humanity did not and still does not share in this bounty, even though now we must all share the consequences of those past choices. This council has declared a climate and ecological emergency. Importantly, it is also committed to engage in dialogue with local citizens to develop our combined responsibility to future generations to produce changes they want and really need. If we cannot recreate this reality in our own neck of the woods, how can we expect justice and a better global future? This is where you, as our local democratically elected representatives, have such a vital role to play. For far too long, the focus has been on the needs of the market over all other considerations. Local democracy can be strengthened in the right environment of cooperation and with the right focus. So I implore this council to further that cause in everything it does. That can be advanced when the committee decides the fate of the Mineral Water Hospital next week. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councillor Guy, any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll defer my factual question to Councillor Warren again, please.
I wondered if Mr. Mountford would be willing to have a meeting with me to discuss how we can further embed climate emergency in everything we do.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, yes.
Right, thank you. Councillor Pritchard?
No factual questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker?
Thank you, John, for a statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moss?
Thanks for the statement. No factual questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Can you now join the meeting on YouTube, please?
Thank you.
Okay, we move on now to the item 6, the draft Lanes local plan partial update. Councillor Ball will be moving the recommendation. Over to you, Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I say it's pleasant to see you in unusual circumstances back online again. If I move on to local plan parcel update, we are in unusual territory for this council to consider a local plan parcel update rather than a full local plan. But circumstances mean that we are not in a position to do that at this stage, due to the failure of the joint spatial plan early in life of this council term. In 2014, inspection of the core strategy, the inspector required this council to update its local plan, and that's what we're doing today. We are required to have a 5-year land supply for housing and currently have this in place, but is running short and will run into deficit in the middle of next year, leaving this council exposed if we do nothing. The local plan parcel update plugs that gap and leaves the council secure until 2027, when our full new local plan will be in place. Many councillors will find this whole process confusing and will need clarification of how it affects them and their residents. And it should be remembered that this is a corporate plan that affects the whole of the district. Local plan updates are something that many councillors will only see once in their life as a councillor. I hate to see it, but this is the 5th one that I've seen. And I can say they will always cause division between councillors in the local role and their corporate role. In a local plan, as it covers so many areas, it's always difficult to focus on any specific point. I can openly share that there are things in this plan I don't like as well. At this point, I would like to thank our wonderful officers for putting this plan together in record time, and also like to thank the members of all political groups for all the time and effort to scrutinise elements of the plan before it got here today. The plan is a plan for the whole council, and it should be work across political divide. And you can all be proud of yourselves for putting this together, enabling this to happen. What does this local plan parcel update deliver? A new net zero carbon policy for build residential and non-residential development. All new residential development provide electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Updated current nature conservation policies to better protect irreplaceable habitats and facilitate nature recovery. Developers deliver 10% biodiversity net gain. Newly allocated sites deliver around 1,100 homes, primarily on brownfield sites, but also greenfield sites in Keynsham and Midsummer Norton. Increased protection for office uses with Bath. Relocation of the bus depot from Western Island. Designated site of Lockswell Road's creative industry hub. Require all HMOs to achieve energy performance certification C or above. remove the park and ride sites to the green belt to developments, transportation interchanges. 3 supplementary planning documents, SPDs, have also been reviewed and updated. They will provide additional guidance to support the policy updates proposed in the local plan parcel update. They will also be subject to consultation alongside the local plan. They address transportation, specifically parking standards, ultra low emission vehicles, walking cycle infrastructure design for new development. Right, where am I? Spare me a second. I lost my track. Local plan updates. Oh, sorry, I lost myself completely now. Bear with me 2 seconds. This local plan has been a lot of work to be taken forward. It's a good plan and delivers what all our communities actually require. I'm sure colleagues add to what I already said during the debate. I therefore recommend to Council on 22nd July that the Council is asked to agree the Baines local plan parcel update proposed submission, draft and policies map changes are contained in attachment 1 to this report and published separate consultation. That the consultation period should be the 27th of August, 8th of October 2021. That delegated authority is granted to the head of planning to make minor amendments and correct any errors to the local plan parcel update proposed submission draft in consultation with cabinet member for planning and licensing. I therefore move this to actually go to council. There are a few more issues regarding there. Planning license to undertake public consultation. Following the public consultation, subject to any changes made as a result of C above, the delegated authority is granted head of planning to submit the Baines local plan parcel update to Secretary of State for examination. Grants head of planning delegated authority in consultation with the cabinet member of planning and licensing to address any issues as they arise during examination, but to bring any proposed modifications to local plan to full council to agree and consult on if required by the inspector. I therefore move.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'm happy to second that, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Over to you.
Councillor Ball has explained the role and importance of partial update to the local plan, and in second of the motion, I encourage local residents and stakeholders, including parish and town councils, to engage in the consultation, which has been amended to avoid much of the school holiday period. This will allow views to be expressed in a more appropriate timeframe and reflect the thoughts of all our residents. These thoughts are really important that we hear what people think. So I'm quite happy to second the motion Councillor Ball has just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Now, I believe that the Labour group are proposing an amendment. Will you accept the amendment, Councillor Ball?
No.
Lisa, it's actually 2 amendments. One is on substantive issues in Poulton. The second amendment, because it is different, is about bringing the final decision or the final part of the consultation back to full council.
Chair, just to advise, the amendment has to be moved and seconded before you ask the original motion. So I think that needs to be undertaken first.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry. Can you clarify that, Michael?
We have a motion and we have an amendment, and in the debating we have to hear the amendment, and that amendment has to be seconded before you can ask the mover of the original motion whether they accept the amendment.
Right. So the amendment, 2 amendments. The first amendment, I think it's an amendment in 2 parts, is it not, Councillor Boss?
That's right, Lisa, yes.
Okay, so the mover, so this is a major amendment, and the
Sorry, Chair. It's Joe here. Should I just clarify? exactly what Robin is moving, because we have a sheet with Amendment 1 and Amendment 2, and I think it's not clear if it's 1 or 2 or both, which is in effect one amendment. So it would be helpful to know. Thanks.
Yeah, there is the Labour Group amendments have one section which is looking at substantive issues in Poulton, which is being moved by Liz and seconded by Grant. Then there are, I think, 4 paragraphs which are asking for that any major amendments, any amendments, and this after consultation, that the plan comes back to us as full council.
Okay, so you are proposing the amendment. Do we have a seconder for these amendments?
I think Liz is proposing the first one because it's a board issue. I'm proposing the second one.
Right. So can I just jump in again? We need to take each individual amendment one by one. So whoever's moving the first amendment, if that's Liz, then I think she needs to do so, and then we'll just take it from there and debate on Amendment 1. Thank you.
Cheers, Joe.
Okay.
And do we have a seconder for your amendment?
Yes, we do. Grant Johnson.
Grant Johnson. Okay. Fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to propose the following amendment. 1, deletion to paragraph 3.13 of the covering report of the reference to increase capacity at the Poulton Printworks site. 2, deletion in table 1C of attachment 1, the reference to an allocation of 80 affordable homes. Why? This Printworks site has been developed over the past 10 years, contributing to quite an extent to the supply of housing in Baines. We would argue that this is a disproportionate amount of housing compared to Poulton's size. Pre the Printworks site development, the population of Poulton was 4,896, rising to 5,302 in 2011, and it's estimated to have gone up quite substantially to over 6,252 this year. The current housing developments have added around 500 homes to Poulton's population, putting a very large strain on our infrastructure. For example, both the infant and junior schools have already been expanded and cannot be expanded further. This was to cater for the extra 500 pupils. The extra pupils expected from the 500 homes. An additional 80 homes will mean children won't be able to attend their local school. The local plan partial update did originally state that the shortfall of homes of over 1,000 would be met by the most sustainable sites of Bath, Keynsham, and the Radco site in Westfield. We would argue Poulton is not a sustainable site. An extra 80 homes would put an incredible strain on our surgery, on our roads, and as I've already mentioned before, on our schools. The parcels of land on the Printworks site mentioned were given outline permission for a mixed use of development, including light industrial and a commitment to a continuing care retirement housing. We would like this wording reinstated. These developments were planned to give our residents 420 jobs as a balance against the large number of jobs lost when the Printworks factory closed. We were promised a mixed development, not just housing. This is letting our residents down. With respect to the Old Mills Industrial Estate, now called the Somer Valley Enterprise Zone, we'd like the words builders merchants, car showrooms deleted, reference to retail food and drink units also taken out. We'd like the original terms, development of light industrial, heavy industrial, and warehousing retained. This is because we want decent, proper jobs, giving people a reasonable standard of living, not minimum wage jobs in service industries employed small numbers of people. This was the very reason that an enterprise zone was created in Poulton, to encourage industries to set up there, to provide decent jobs. I urge you to accept this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Councillor Johnson to second this amendment.
Yes, I'm more than happy to second this amendment, which has been put before council on the 22nd of July. As a local councillor, I'm always listening to what my residents have to say about the village that we live in. And I'm sure all the members here would agree that they know what issues come up time and time again. Well, in Poulton, the issues that get brought up time and time again are always directly or indirectly surrounding the same thing, and that's the existing Purnell's development. Any increase in residential development here will only extend these issues. So issue number one is school parking, which is at saturation point. And worse still, it is putting members of the same community at odds with one another. This has been caused by the increasing capacity of both the Poulton schools to deal with the amount of residential development at the Purnell site. And as my fellow ward member pointed out, these schools cannot cope with further housing developments as they are already at capacity. Issue number two is the confusion that these large developments create amongst the community that they are built in. Everything starts off with an idyllic view of what the development could look like, which sow the seeds of support in the community. But what we have now is anger and a perception from residents that promises have not been kept from the developers of the Purnell site. Issue number three is the impact on local services in the village, especially when it comes to matters of health. The local pharmacy has been struggling to cope with the demands that our ever-increasing population is putting on it. And the same goes for our local dentists and surgery, with wait times on the rise due to the seemingly endless development of Poulton. Unfortunately, this partial update is now going to consultation, but our community does not have any faith that this consultation process will actually listen in the way that me and Liz do. This amendment before you reflects the views of our residents in Poulton, and it is so important that they are heard. So I urge you to accept this amendment.
Okay, now I believe I asked the question as to Councillor Ball, will you accept this amendment?
No.
Okay, so we then have to debate the amendment. I believe it is acceptable for Councillor Ball to speak on the amendment. Is it, Joe? Yes? Off you go, Councillor Ball.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do sympathise with some of what the Poulton councillors have said, but this, as remember, as I said earlier, is a corporate plan for the whole of Bath and North East Somerset. It's not a local plan. To correct some of the issues that have been raised by both councillors, Education Services have confirmed there is projected to be sufficient capacity to accommodate children in the proposed development in a local primary school in Poulton. That's come from the Education Department of the council. Listening to a consultation, well, that is an issue of where anything that's said in the consultation period is fed directly to the inspector in examination. And I hope Councillor Johnson was not saying the inspector will not listen to him, because Councillor Johnson will have a right to speak in front of the inspector himself if he responds to the consultation. It's not down to members of this council to consider issues that are raised in the consultation on the local plan itself. So I hope that's correct a few issues to actually help along the line. As a council, we are listening. I'm listening to what's being said all the time. And I've listened this evening, but I will say the local plan this evening will give protection to that land. If it's not going through the consultation process, you'll lose any protection whatsoever. And the developers are already aware of it. I'm aware there's outline permission on several pieces of land already. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson.
Sorry, I couldn't hear terribly well. If you don't sort of speak straight face on, councillors, I'm afraid I struggle with my deafness. But thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for giving me this opportunity to support my colleagues in Poulton. Councillor Tim Ball has just said that this local plan update applies to the whole of the area. Unfortunately, it's been my sad experience on the planning committee and as a member of that committee that gave the original planning permission for the Poulton site development, to see time and time again that developers evade what we might consider to be their obligations to provide social facilities, particularly residential homes, and just replace them with housing. I could reel off sites in Odddown, in Midsummer Norton, and in other places in Baines where, if this Poulton abnegation is accepted, we will find that there will be provided justification why they will cram in yet more housing on sites where we would expect to find serious employment, industrial use, and so on. And secondly, across the whole of North East Somerset, at least as far as I'm aware, the council has a policy of encouraging high street developments. And I am seriously concerned that it could be that if this development were to go ahead in the form that has been suggested, but this is always lots of mights and we don't really know, and I wouldn't prejudge them, there will be a serious impact on our high streets if retail is allowed to be permitted in industrial sites. And I would point out that with regard to the Westfield industrial sites, applications for retail and restaurantation,
1 minute left
now, cafes have been turned down. And we must be consistent with all our applications across the whole area, and our policy, as Councillor Wall says, must be Baines wide.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And finally, Councillor Moss.
Thank you. It's just picking up on the point that that Tim Ball raised about is this the right place for Liz and Grant to be raising their particular ward issues. And I'd say that that Liz and Grant aren't trying to insert Poulton references into a document. They're actually responding to the Poulton references that actually exist within the document that are already there. And we know that this is a document that belongs to all of us. The report says it's the council, and that's us. And we know that this sets the scene for the consultation. So I would argue that, Tim, you're actually wrong in saying that Liz and Grant should deal with this through the consultation process. It's actually right of them to look to amend those Poulton references within the document that goes out to be consulted on.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor Wall, you have the right to sum up before we take the vote.
I think I've already said what I want to say on this particular item, Chair. I ask people to reject the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. We will use the traditional form, assuming that the majority want to support the substantive and therefore vote against this amendment, as Councillor Ball has suggested. Can I have in the chat those who wish to vote against the amendment, please? Those who wish to vote for the amendment. I do beg your pardon. So
can we have that clarified again? That, I'm afraid that was a dreadful muddle. It came across very confused. Can you please state it a little bit more clearly? Thank you.
I apologise, Councillor Samuel. Councillor Ball has urged councillors to vote against this amendment, and therefore for this amendment, can we have votes in the chat room? Votes for the amendment. Votes for the amendment. Got that, Joe?
Sorry, I've just put it. I have to go between chat and muting. So yes, so far I have noted 7 councillors for the amendment.
No, there's more than that. Councillor Moss, Councillor Dando.
Oh, hang on, there's more coming in.
Jackson, Wright, Hardman, Johnson, Hughes, Blackburn, Devon, Hardman, and now Jackson. Councillor Jackson's voted twice. Oh, sorry, no, she hasn't.
Let's just clarify.
Moss, Dando, Jackson, Wright, Hardman, Johnson, Hughes, Blackburn, Bevan, Hardman.
No, that's Liz twice. We also have Joanna Wright.
Madam Chair, with respect, we have not voted twice. We have simply pointed out that we counted differently.
Actually, sorry, just to clarify, Councillor Liz Hardman did vote twice, but that's
I
fine.
did. I did, Chair. I couldn't see my vote to start with, so I voted again, just to be sure.
We have Councillor Moss, Councillor Dando, Jackson, Wright, Hardman, Johnson, Hughes, Blackburn, Bevan.
So I make that 8 votes for.
Thank you. Can I have any abstentions, please? No, then the amendment is rejected. We now move forward again to the substantive. The first person to speak is Councillor May. Councillor May, please.
Chair, weren't there two amendments? Yeah, there are 2 amendments. We need to move on to the second amendment if there's a
Beg your pardon. Yes, yep. I do. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get any brownie points from Councillor Samuels at all tonight. I can see this. Right. So we now go to the second amendment, and I call on Councillor Moss to move the amendment. Who is going to second it, Councillor Moss?
Councillor Jackson.
Right. Thank you. Off you go.
Labour Group to move the following paragraph D, that in the results of the public consultation are considered by council, and that the draft Baines local plan partial update is brought back to council for approval before being submitted to the Secretary of State for examination. And paragraph E, that any proposed modifications to the local plan partial updated during the examination are brought to council for approval. We've been here, of course, before with this discussion about how the consultation processes seem to be started by the council, by us as the council, as councillors, and then we don't actually get a say on them as it goes through to the final part of the consultation. And of course, particularly, planning is political and it is controversial, particularly those elements within this about housing. And the local plan update, as it says in the covering part of this report, belongs to us. It belongs to the council and it belongs to councillors. And we actually need to take that responsibility. And it's disappointing that when officers are planning a consultation process that again, they appeared to have failed to include that final, bring it back to us for a final rubber stamp for the final part of the consultation. And this isn't intending to edit what is said by consultees or changing the evidence that is given, but it's the opportunity for us as councillors to reflect on what the community is saying and to actually make some final comments. And I appreciate that Tim has put a slight amendment in there that says that that the consultation could come back to council if inspectors if requires, but I don't believe that is enough. We're the people who are going to get the stick when, as
1 minute remaining,
these updates are controversial. We're the people who is going to get the stick. We're going to get the earache. We're going to get the grief as councillors, and we need to have the opportunity to have one final say. And so I would say that, I think as Tim said, this is probably one of the most important documents, pieces of policy that we have to deal with. I think we need to take our responsibility within that. And I will say, as one of the most important documents we deal with, I'll be asking for a named vote on this amendment on the principle of consultation. And please can Tim clarify that the final document will actually go to a named vote as well, as should be good practice in such an important policy statement.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. I'm seconding these amendments because I think it's extremely important for the council to own the whole process from beginning to end. Councillor Ball is absolutely right to say that this document concerns the whole area and the whole community. We are the representatives of that community in this area, and therefore substantive amendments should come back to us to own. There's an orphanage in India called near where I used to work called Boys Town, and it was an absolute model and extremely successful because the boys were organised as a council like us, and they took all the important decisions on policy and discipline. It might take them a whole evening to argue it out, but they got there and they owned their decisions. And it should be the same with us, that we own these decisions. And I think we're going to be considering the amendments to the Standards Code of Conduct, Standards Committee Code of Conduct. The same principle applies there. So I think, although I think the consultation process could have been much improved, and although I think this document is a bit thin in places, it's really important that we have it come back. I'm a survivor of the 2007 and the 2014 processes where it came back to council. So I would ask you very much to accept this recommendation for the decisions that are to be passed tomorrow. And I also second the having of a named vote.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Ball, will you accept this second amendment, please?
No.
Okay, so we then go to debate on this second amendment. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I thought very clearly when I moved the original motion. I understand what Eleanor's saying, I understand what Robin's saying, but it's a bit semantics really to get this to come to another full council meeting. The consultation process, we have to trust our residents to actually respond to what we put out in front of them. We own the policy we're putting on the table this evening, and it is very clear. When council agrees it tonight, it's what they want to consult on. When the consultation process is complete, we are not allowed to tinker with the plan itself. Every comment made has to go directly to the inspector, untouched, unfettered. That is the way it needs to be. We've already got in the main motion this evening the requirement that any amendments or any substantive alterations the inspector requires or wishes us to consider comes back to a full council meeting to be consulted on again and then come for adoption of the council eventually. So we've covered those particular angles and to make sure it's a very clean, clear process. What we don't want to be accused of as a council, like the JSP was, which failed, political manipulation, and that's somewhere I don't want to be, and I'm sure Robin doesn't want to be there either. But those are the accusations that come out in front of the inspector the second we touch it. So the clean process is it goes to consultation, goes to inspection, and comes back to council. Goes to inspection and comes back to council for any major amendments. It's the only way we can do it. I'm happy to give undertaking to council this evening to come back in December to political groups to talk about anything that's come through in the consultation process, but to have a full council meeting is not the right way, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Councillor Wright.
Good evening. As the sole Green councillor on this council, I would very much like to support the Labour group who are putting forward this amendment. I find it quite interesting that Councillor Ball has used the term with regard to consultations that we trust our residents, when a recent consultation on North Road, which had a 51% in favour for putting in that, was not taken forward, and that the consultation was not listened to by residents, and in fact that the present council administration is now looking at a citizens' jury. So the concern around bringing this back to full council is is a real worry to many members who are there to represent their community. This partial plan update is of great concern to a great number of people in our communities, and therefore to represent them properly, this document should be brought back to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Pritchard, please.
Yes, the Conservative group formed an amendment very similar to this. And what we did is worked closely with the officers, Simone de Beer and Councillor Tim Ball, to see if we could, our concerns could be accommodated. And Councillor Ball has given a very succinct appraisal of the process now. So it goes, this goes out to consultation. The results of that consultation go to the inspector. Anything from the inspector that's profound, a profound change will come back to a meeting of full council. This accommodates the time sensitivities of this document. Without that, we're exposed. And no matter what you don't want anywhere, you can get spurious applications from unscrupulous developers, and we have no control. So I'm grateful to the officers and Councillor Ball in responding to the Conservative group concerns, and the recommendation as written in the substantive motion will cover that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Please sum up, Councillor Ball.
Councillor Pritchard's done it for me. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you. Now, full council.
Sorry, I thought I was summed up as the person moving the amendment.
No, you don't. No, you don't. I can be categorical on that, as I have my chart. You don't. It goes back to the substantive. Right, I have 4 councillors who have called for a name vote, namely Councillor Moss, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Johnson and Councillor Harding. Unfortunately, you need 6 people to request a name vote before it will go.
I understand there was 5, and I'd understood that Councillor Dando was also supporting. There's myself, there's Grant Johnson, there's Liz Hardman, there's Joanna Wright, and there's Chris Dando and June Player. We're now at 6.
Okay, fine. That goes to 7. Well, you need 6. That's fine. So, Joe, I have to ask you to take a name vote. So you will be voting either for this second amendment from Councillor Moss, abstaining, or rejecting the motion, the amendment, sorry, in line with Councillor Ball's view. Right, Joe. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Rob Appleyard.
Can we get through this as possible, councillors?
So, sorry, Rob Appleyard. Tim Ball.
I think you said against, yes. Tim Ball.
Sorry, could I just clarify? I saw Rob's name pop up, but I didn't hear whether he said anything. Rob, have you voted?
Yeah, I said I was against.
Okay, thank you. Tim Ball. Sarah Bevan.
Abstain.
Colin Blackburn.
Against.
Alison Bourne.
Against.
Shelley Bromley.
Against.
Neil Butters.
Against.
Vic Clark.
Against.
Sue Craig.
Against.
Jerry Curran.
Against.
Chris Dando.
For.
Tom Davis.
Against.
Sally Davis.
Against.
Doug Deacon. Councillor Deacon, are you voting?
gone to sleep.
No comments like that, please.
Okay, I'll move on. Councillor Winston Dogood.
Against.
Mark Elliott.
Against.
Michael Evans.
Against.
Kevin Guy.
Against.
Alan Hale.
Against.
Liz Hardman.
For.
Steve Hedges.
Against.
Joel Hurst.
Against.
Duncan Hounsell.
Against.
Sean Hughes.
Against.
Eleanor Jackson.
For.
Grant Johnson.
For.
Dr. Kumar.
Against.
Hal McPhee.
Against.
Ruth Malloy.
Against.
Paul May.
Against.
Matt McCabe.
Against.
Sarah Moore.
Against.
Robin Moss.
For.
Paul Myers.
Against.
Lisa O'Brien.
Against.
Just check. Barrett Pankania. I don't think he's here. No, thank you. June Player.
For.
Vic Pritchard.
Against.
Amanda Rigby.
Against.
Dina Romero.
Against.
Mark Roper.
Against.
Richard Samuel.
Against.
Bruce Shern.
Against.
Brian Simmons.
Against.
Alistair Singleton.
Against.
Sean Stevenson McGall.
Against.
Karen Walker.
Against.
Sarah Warren.
Against.
Karen Warrington.
Against.
Chris Watt.
Against.
Ryan Wills.
Against.
Dave Wood.
Against.
Joanna Wright.
For.
Thank you. That's 7 councillors for, 43 councillors voting against and 1 abstention. So that falls.
Thank you, Joe. So the second amendment has fallen. So we go back to the substantive. And the first, there is quite a list of speakers. So let's move quickly on. Paul May first, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased to support the motion. I respect the urgency behind it of the process. As Vic has said, leaves the area vulnerable if we turned it down. Baines have learnt the difficult lesson from the JSP. Whether it's a strategic plan or a local plan, they go to independent planning inspectors. So we must have respect for our professionals who've worked really hard on this, and they've been fully engaged in the preparation of this thing. We've, through the LDF, which Councillor Ball chairs, has been inclusive of all political parties. We need to approve an updated plan to protect the area from inappropriate housing development up to 2029. I think Councillor Ball said 2027, so we perhaps check that. An approved local plan will provide our area real protection when WECA consider their new strategic plan for the area for the 3 unitary authority housing numbers, which may harmfully protect Bristol at the expense of Baines. So we need to have a really firm base moving forward, and I support the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be supporting this paper and the recommendation 2.1 and the revised recommendations proposed by Councillor Ball. I'm really pleased to see that there will be no more further large development for Peacedown St John, and for the proposal for South Road car park in St Norton will stay as a car park and provide additional benefits such as solar energy. And at last, introducing a policy that requires all HMOs to provide a good standard of accommodation. Landlords have been allowed for too long to rent out half standard accommodation, so I will be supporting this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor McPhee.
I'm reading a
Does that mean-
statement. Sorry, was it McPhee?
Yes, McPhee.
Yeah. I'm reading a statement from Andy Waite with which I concur, and it begins, I cannot support the local plan partial update. When the original local plan began in 2011, the planning inspector at the time stated that no more houses could be built in Keynsham without significant improvements in infrastructure. To this end, 2 more parcels of land in Andy's ward, my ward as well, were taken out of the Greenbelt and given the status of safeguarded land. This land was not to be built on until such improvements were forthcoming. Building 280 houses on these safeguarded pieces of land with only a slight improvement to an existing cycleway on the pavement along the A4 from the edge on Salford to the edge of Keynsham is not improvement enough in infrastructure. There is talk of mass transit along the A4 corridor and a metro bus, but once more it appears that developers want to build houses first. There is an existing planning application for the larger piece of land already. I see little evidence of carbon neutrality in this change, nor indeed a 10% increase in biodiversity.
Thank you, Councillor McPhee. Councillor Warren.
Hi. One of the main motivations behind the local plan partial update is to reflect the climate and ecological emergencies in our planning, to finally allowing in our planning policy, finally allowing us to take planning decisions that support our commitment made in 2019, which is why I'm pleased to support it. We are constrained by national planning policy in how far we can go, but we are consulting and the consultation responses will go to the planning inspector. So I would encourage anyone who supports these changes to embed the climate and ecological emergencies in planning policy, or who would even prefer them to go further, to be sure to comment to this effect on the consultation to ensure that the huge public support for this principle is conveyed strongly to the inspector. So thank you, Councillor Ball. I support the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to support this update to the local plan this evening, and I particularly welcome the updates to the policies regarding purpose-built student accommodation and houses in multiple occupation. As a member and now chair of the planning committee, we often find ourselves in the position of not being able to deliver a decision which would be best for our residents because we have not had the supporting policy behind us. Without those policies, we risk losing that appeal, which costs the council money it can ill afford. These updates will provide us with those much needed policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Craig. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate. I could not find any mention of this SB2 about the rugby ground stadium, or REC as we call, on the published URL on our council website about the local plan partial update proposed submission draft for public consultation and then further submission to the Secretary of State for public examination. Then it means that if the partial update goes ahead, then the existing policies relating to the ground still stands, which I cannot support in principle, particularly in the light of the news of this morning of Liverpool losing its UNESCO heritage status. And ironically, the decision was taken in a country where most of the leaders, whether it was Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, or now Xi Jinping, they just don't care about heritage and environment. Overdevelopment on a land which was donated not to a billionaire businessman, but to local residents of Bath, according to Covenant, then that could mean losing our own UNESCO heritage status, which will bring shame not to...
Councillor Kumar, can you stick to the matter in hand, please?
Yes, so that's what I'm speaking about, that this plan does not contain anything about that. and that means that the original plan stands. Therefore, I cannot.
Please, will you lower your voice?
Okay. Yeah, because I thought that you are not able to listen properly. That's fine then. So I should be given one more mere time because of the obstruction. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that this way—
1 minute left.
We will lose UNESCO heritage status, and we are all very proud of the Time magazine that has put Bath among the top places to visit. Therefore, Madam Chair, I am regularly harassed by some of the council members and public in particularly for expressing my opinion. My freedom of expression is my birthright, protected under Article 10 of Human Rights Act. And I cannot believe that I have been asked not to speak because I was not born in this country and not opine my views on a stadium. I consider this as a glaring example of direct racism.
Councillor Kumar, I'm going to stop you there. No one has.
Yes, I am stopping.
Sorry, I'm going to stop you there.
Time's up anyway.
No one
I'm
has
myself stopping, Madam.
that you cannot speak. It is important when you address council looking at any report motion that you restrict your discussions to that motion, and you are going off on a tangent. You are also raising your voice above a level which other councillors found a little bit distressing. So you are, as a councillor, always have the opportunity to speak, but please be on the subject and moderate your voice. Thank you very much. Right, can we now go to Councillor Hughes, please?
Thank you. So I appreciate this is going to go to a public consultation. However, we're very concerned that local concerns have been completely ignored up until now. I mean, I'll draw your attention to section 3.14, sections F and G. I mean, firstly, South Roads. I mean, our town has enough issues without the council continually trying to sell our car park, initially to a supermarket, and now apparently potentially for housing. The car park is key to the survival and the revival of our town centre. But that doesn't seem to be considered. I mean, secondly, the Soma Valley Enterprise area, the enterprise zone. The council continues seem to refuse to engage with us with our concerns, and seem to think that you can tell us what we actually need in our area. The steering group has no local representation on it. It's made up of Bath officers and Bath councillors, and it seems that the steering group seem to be able to dictate to us over here what we should and shouldn't have. So I would say I have serious concerns about the engagement processes, and although I will probably be supporting this motion, I would urge council to find a way to fully include areas in North East Somerset in this consultation and take our concerns seriously. We live here, we know what our area needs, and we need to be involved in that process and not dictated to by Bath. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Moss.
Thank you. It's a difficult decision, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I appreciate that we need the protection that a local plan affords us, because there are developers out there who would take advantage. But equally, what we have is a flawed consultation process. And unfortunately, and I'll use the example of Paulton, because Liz and Grant outlined it. What we have is a document that is going out with a pre-planned council position that local residents can put their consultation, their objections in to what's in that plan. And Sean has outlined there's some issues with Midsummer Norton. Then it doesn't come back to us and it goes to the inspector. And the chances are that the inspector said there's no substantial change because it's within the document that what the council wants to do. And I think that we have a flawed consultation process. We've been through this before, and really council officers, when they are planning these consultations, should think of councillors, should think of us as elected representatives, include us at the beginning and the end of that process. And once again, they have singularly failed to do that. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I'm sure that this timetable wasn't planned to make it impossible in terms of timetable for us to comment on that. So this is a flawed consultation process. I don't think it will stand up in front of the inspectors. The Labour group will not be voting for this tonight, and we will probably be making our concerns known to the inspectors about the consultation process. And I'm sure that the named vote that will take place at the end of this report will be part of the
1 minute remaining
of how I'm afraid the current administration are railroading stuff through, and officers are railroading stuff through without allowing councillors full discussion and full debate. Very.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor McCabe.
Oh, yeah, I think we've heard lots of issues, local issues from wards, but we've also heard about the dangers of political interference and how that can undermine the whole process. And what we have here is the ability to raise the local ward issues directly with the inspector and have somebody who's entirely independent and authoritative rule on what should go forward. So I would like to thank all the members of the LDF, where I deputised for Tim occasionally, the LDF steering group from all parties, from all corners of Bath and North East Somerset. I'd like to thank you all for the effort and contributions you made, and I'd like to thank the officers who responded to those consultations and made the changes that we required, and I am very happy to support this document.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. And final speaker, Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to support this motion, but I do reflect on the document that it's very big on carbon dioxide reduction and carbon neutrality in general, whereas I'm pleased to go beyond national guidelines in that respect. Okay, I'd be very pleased if it would also go beyond national guidelines in thinking about the space which new houses are afforded. When I was young, which is a very long time ago, admittedly, there was some sneering by the tabloid press about the rabbit hutches which Japanese people were unfortunate enough to live in, apparently. But nowadays, we have the smallest accommodation in Europe on average, and it will be good to see some concern about that, as well as about CO2. On the rejection of the Labour Second Amendment, and I'm extremely pleased that we're not going to go back to the sectionalism and bickering which we had over the core strategy in the past, and which made the area liable to developers' opportunistic plans. In Midsummer Norton, it's wonderful that the South Road car park retail scheme has been dropped, in my opinion, and that may bring forward the huge Welton Bibby Barron brownfield site, which already has planning permission, but wants to have a retail component. And I hope that the council will be able to help that huge process go through. We suffer from being next to Mendip. 550 new houses on Mendip's watch will be bolted onto the edge of Midsummer Norton in an inappropriate place, while a huge brownfield site remains empty in the middle of Midsummer Norton. Hopefully this plan will move that forward a bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I am going to ask Councillor Ball to sum up, please, and then we will move to a name vote if that is required by the 6 councillors, please. So, Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. Can I address Councillor Kumar first? I will be the last person not to ask Councillor Kumar to speak. I always enjoy hearing his impassioned speeches. But on this one, he is not correct. We're only consulting on policies that are subject to any change or amendment this evening. So it's not on the paper SB2. Councillor Moss made a very impassioned speech right at the end. But Councillor Moss, you must remember you were part of the process putting this plan together. Councillor Jackson worked extremely hard on arguing points in the plans put together. This is not an administration plan. This is a plan of the whole council, and we all take ownership of it this evening. So I'm a bit dismayed at some of your remarks. But there again, there's your entitlement to have those remarks. Can I pick up Paul May's issue? Yes, it is 2029, but I'm always a skeptic, and I would rather say 2027 so I know we're safe on that particular issue. Development of safeguarded land at Keynsham will still be subject to transportation infrastructure improvements, and these are now focused on sustainable transport in line with the climate emergency. So we will be working with local councils there and actually dealing with that issue. Allocating safeguarded land in a local plan parcel update will help ensure developers higher quality development, including the biodiversity net gain. I've already covered direct policy, but I will mention again very quickly that in the core strategy, it was agreed by the inspector and UNESCO didn't raise a concern. I understand things have changed and that may be moving in different directions these days. The primary emphasis on the local plan parcel updates maintaining the South Road car park in Midsummer Norton, and any housing development must complement and maintain the car parking function. I hope that answers Councillor Hughes. All councillors, as you know, have been involved in the LDF process, and I've been very lenient in the chair, allowing additional members in, although proportionality says it's sometimes incorrect. So extra ones are sat there all the time. Everybody's had a chance to have to say. The actual local plan parcel update seeks to help deliver much needed jobs in Summer Valley Enterprise Zone. And I understand, Councillor Hughes, that you may be hearing Councillor Samuel shortly to actually encourage some more dialogue between you and that area. The consultation will be well publicised, with full opportunity for communities to respond and have issues considered by the inspector. I certainly intend coming out, subject to pandemic allowing, and coming to Westfield, Councillor Moss, to make sure your residents do engage with the issue and to make sure you put your responses in, which I hope you're going to properly.
Will do, Tim.
This is a plan for all of us, and a plan for all of us to have our say.
1 minute remaining.
Grind, regardless of this local plan parcel update, but to ensure its success, and as to be able to protect specialist land, get the biodiversity gains in, to make sure we have a sustainable plan till 2029, when our new local plan will take over. I will leave it at that now, thank you, and recommend the actual motion to council tomorrow night.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. We will move to the vote. We have 6 members who have asked for a named vote. That is Moss, Jackson, Dando, Johnson, Wright, and Hardman. So, Joe, can we have a named vote again, please? After that,
Yes.
we'll have a 5-minute break.
Thank you. Rob Appleyard.
4.
Tim Ball.
4.
Sarah Bevan.
4.
Colin Blackburn.
4.
Alison Bourne.
4.
Shelley Bromley.
4.
Neil Butters.
4.
Vic Clark.
4.
Sue Craig.
4.
Jerry Curran.
4.
Chris Dando.
Against.
Tom Davis.
4.
Sally Davis.
4.
Doug Deacon. I think Doug has left the meeting. Winston Dogood.
4.
Mark Elliott.
4.
Michael Evans.
4.
Andy Furs, just checking. I don't think Andy's here. Thank you. Kevin Guy.
4.
Alan Hale.
4.
Liz Hardman.
Against.
Steve Hedges.
4. Sorry.
Thank you. Joel Hurst.
4.
Duncan Hounsell.
4.
Sean Hughes.
4.
Eleanor Jackson.
Against.
Grant Johnson.
Against.
Dr. Kumar,
Abstain.
Hal McPhee,
Abstain.
Ruth Malloy,
For.
Paul May,
For.
Matt McCabe,
For.
Sarah Moore,
4,
Robin Moss,
Against.
Paul Myers,
For.
Lisa O'Brien,
For.
Barrett Pankania, are you here? I think not. Okay, June Player,
For.
Dick Pritchard,
For.
Manda Rigby,
For.
Dina Romero,
For.
Mark Roper,
For.
Richard Samuel,
For.
Bruce Shern,
For.
Brian Simmons,
For.
Alistair Singleton,
For.
Sean Stevenson McGall,
For.
Karen Walker,
For.
Sarah Warren,
For.
Karen Warrington,
For.
Chris Watt,
For.
Ryan Wills,
For.
Dave Wood,
For.
Joanna Wright.
Abstain.
Thank you. That's 44 councillors voting in favour, 5 councillors voting against, and 3 abstentions. So that motion is carried.
Thank you, Joe. We will now take a 5-minute break. Can I please remind councillors to switch off their mics, go on mute, so you can take the 5-minute break quietly. Thank you. See you back in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being prompt. I believe Joe would just like to check the correct voting numbers. Joe?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to clarify a couple of voting numbers which weren't announced correctly by me. On Amendment 1, it was 9 councillors voting for, and I do have those councillors noted. And on the substantive just now, it was 43 councillors voting in favour, 5 against and 3 abstentions, not 44, as I said. I've checked against my sheet. Thank you.
Donald Trump was right. These elections.
Thank you very much, Joe. I think you do a pretty fantastic job trying to keep us all in order, so I think we'll forgive you. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is the Youth Justice Plan. Councillor Romero, would you like to propose, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I won't take very long doing this. Hopefully we'll be able to get through this item faster than the item that has preceded this. So the whole purpose of this paper is bringing forward the Youth Justice Plan for 2021 to 2022. This is something we have to do. It is a statutory duty, and you are, as a council, are being asked to agree that the Youth Justice Plan fulfills the requirements of the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998, and so can be submitted to the Youth Justice Board for England and Wales. You're also being asked to adopt the Youth Justice Plan as part of the council's policy and budget framework, so that can be accommodated within the council's budget. And finally, to note that the Youth Offending Service Management Board is responsible for ensuring delivery and to ask the relevant PDS panel to oversee performance. So if I may, I'd just like to go into a little bit more detail. So the Youth Offending Services and the partners they work with, as I said, have statutory responsibility to prevent offending by children aged 10 to 17 years. And this plan has been written in accordance with the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998 and has had input from the national guidance. So it has had national guidance from the Youth Justice Board to set out services to prevent youth offending. And as you will all be aware, in Bath and North East Somerset, we fund a considerable part of this. Children who are caught up in the justice system are amongst the most vulnerable children in our area. Some, as I'm sure you will be aware, are already known to wider children's services because of the difficulties they as individuals face. One of the important parts of our plan is that we view children in contact with the Youth Offending Service as children rather than offenders. And the work that the service does helps them to make positive changes which take full account of their individual stories and also looks at adverse childhood experiences, discrimination and exploitation by others. So if you want to look at Appendix 4, you will see how the Youth Offending Services has refreshed its own values to reflect this approach, which is consistent with National Youth Justice Board's visions for children who first arrive in the youth justice system. Further on in the paper, it goes on to talk about the rates, the numbers and rates which have reduced significantly, which reflect, I believe, the positive impact of the youth crime diversion and prevention and wider early help services, which can address children's needs and behaviours. One concern that I know many will have worried about is the impact of the pandemic, and so the opportunities to offer preventative support that may have been missed, and that many more children may enter the formal justice system in the future as a result. So there has been a slight rise in that number and in the rate of first-time entrants in 2020, but there's no data yet to compare with other areas to see whether this is part of a wider pattern. The Youth Offending Service works with a range of partners, and I'll just list some of those. So we've got DHI Project 28, Youth Connect Southwest, Social Care's Adolescence and Care Experience Team, and also the Violence Reduction Unit. which also includes a newly appointed coordinator for the council, a sergeant and 2 dedicated PCSOs.
1 minute remaining.
Finally, I'd just like to add that the police constable undertakes a range of tasks that include becoming involved in restorative work if the children wish to do so. And if the victims and the children wish to do so. So I hope you are supportive of the general approach, and I hope everybody will vote for this paper. So I'm happy to move this paper as all the recommendations are.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Hardman, will you like to second this, please?
Thank you. I'm pleased to second this motion, which is mainly about adopting the Youth Justice Plan, which shows how the Youth Offending Service has performed this year and its plans and priorities for the coming year. The priority and focus, of course, have been to prevent youth offending. The Youth Offending Service, as Dean has already said, works with a number of partners, and this has been a very successful year. The number of first-time entrants into the criminal justice system has been significantly reduced, and there have been no custodial sentences since April 2019, which is quite something, full stop. What is worrying, however, is there's been an increase in more serious youth offending, including more serious violence. The numbers, however, are very small, but we have been assured in this report that measures are in place to deal with these problems, including working with a wide range of partners. Dina has mentioned about the challenges under COVID, and the report states there have been challenges in maintaining the statutory service. But we can be confident that this report shows the Youth Offending Service has given priority to maintaining contact with children at greatest risk, resulting in the very positive figures that we've seen. The business and improvement plans again show the focus on prevention in supporting children not to reoffend. The budget breakdown shows that BAMES, as Dina has mentioned briefly, contributes much more than the other services put together. However, this is all within budget, as there are grants from the Youth Justice Board for England and Wales and the Youth Custody Service, which contribute to over 50% of the BAMES budget. This is a report we can be confident in and a service that we can be confident in, and I urge you to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hardman. Councillor May.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to support this motion. It's a thoroughly professional report done by the officers, and it highlights, I think, for us all that youth offending often is a sign of vulnerability of young people. The approach of the professionals to actually work with those young people is really, really encouraging. I think it's often, this just gets nodded through the council, and I think it's something that we spend £800,000 a year on, and it is really an important service, and we should actually be very mindful of the report tonight, and I'm very much support it. I also find, though, the partnership element of this is really important, and it's sad that we're putting in something like 53% of the funding, whilst the police only put in 8%. I've made this comment in the past, and I will continue to make it, that it's supposed to be an equal partnership, but it's perhaps not. And the other thing, perhaps just for the chairman to consider, is that the BME community are really probably more vulnerable at the moment, and it's perhaps a target moving forward to get a better balance of BME staff within the youth offending service if we can. So very much support it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. There does not seem to be any other speakers. So can I ask Councillor Romero to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you. And I'd just like to thank both Liz Hardman and also Paul May for their comments. And with both of them, I agree with many of the points that have been made, and clearly 53% is not an equal partnership. But I guess at the end of the day, we want our young children and young people to have opportunities so that they are then not criminalised further on in their lives. And the point that Paul May also made about BME staff, I think, is well recognised, and all partners are doing what they can to ensure better representation, but also to ensure that there are appropriate role models for the children that then are coming into that particular service too. So I'm happy to leave my comments there and then to move to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Rivero. Now we quite clear on this. It's a vote. Is anybody against this proposal? Can you please show it in the chat, please? Any votes against? Are there any abstentions? No, then the vote is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We move now to agenda item 8, the Treasury Management Outturn Report. Councillor Samuel, would like to move.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the annual report that Council receives, and it looks back to the 2021 financial year. The report shows the details of the Council's financial performance against the set out in the Treasury Management Strategy. Excuse me, and it is prepared in accordance with SIPFA guidance in its Treasury Code of Practice, and it is for noting. I will highlight a number of issues. The overall returns on investments were 0.41%, sorry, 0.41%, which was actually 0.43% among our benchmark, which was actually minus 0.0%. So it's actually a negative interest rate. So we did rather better, even if they are small numbers. On returns through the year, the gross return on our investments was £332,000, and that relates to that 0.43% over the benchmark. That figure was boosted by a £5 million investment that we made in the CCLA property fund, which is actually earning a 3.69%. So that brought up the averages. In terms of borrowings, our overall borrowings remain at 243.5 million. To note was that on the 1st of April 2020, we did borrow £15 million, which was deliberately done to provide cash flow because at that point of the pandemic, the government had not announced any funding for local authorities, and we felt it prudent to have some cash available if we needed it. So there was some short-term borrowing done on that. The council's capital financing requirement remains at around 326 million, and that represents our underlying borrowing requirements, although it is more than the amounts we actually have borrowed. There were some key investment decisions through the year, and as members know, this council does not place its funds in one place. We invest across a range of funds. We have 72.5 million invested in funds of various sorts, and they're set out in the report. But no long-term investments were made in 2021. One of the pieces of work that we have been doing, following interest from members, is that we can now confirm that none of our investments are held with funds that fund fossil fuel depletion activities. And I think that's the first time. And linked to that, a review of environmental, social and corporate governance has been undertaken by officers. A report has been prepared for the council, and that's been undergoing due diligence in this financial year. And a member workshop on this subject is being held on the 2nd of August, where we'll be able to discuss how we invest in these more ethical funds in the future. The annual, I'll enclose our revisers, and the annual report from them is at Appendix 5. All I will say here is to echo the leader's warning on council finances. If there are further lockdowns, and I believe there will be, I just hope they do not hit the key income earning activities of the council, then we will have to take corrective action during this financial year to deal with that. Arlene Close, of course, point out that the prospect for higher interest rates are very low because of the state of the national economy. And so I don't think I need to say any more about that. The Public Works Loan Board's members will be aware that the government introduced some changes there, and the details of what we can borrow through PWLB are now set out in paragraph 327.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Coming to a close, one of the big changes last year was as a result of the COVID recovery plan that we had to put into effect. There was a big reduction of 2.3 million, which related to capital programme reductions, and that feeds into the Treasury management. So to conclude, Chair, I would like to thank Andy Rothery, Gary Adams and their teams who have worked really hard on this work every day of the year, tracking funds and making sure that our income and borrowing is as most efficient as it can be. And they do this work in the background and we thank them for it. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Chair of the Corporate Audit Committee, I'd like to add my thanks for the hard work of the officers in managing our investments during a year which has been dominated by the pandemic. The Council has maintained an extremely solid position with regard to its investments during a very difficult year. With over 70 million of investments to manage, the Treasury function is obviously a vital part of providing a solid financial foundation for the Council. I note that once again, our average rate of return on our investments was higher than our benchmark rate for every month of the year, whilst retaining a AAA average credit rating across the portfolio, which is well above our benchmark single A rating. I'm also delighted to see further progress on the efforts to embed action to tackle the climate emergency in everything the Council does. Section 7 of the report sets out not only our continuing commitment to not to directly invest in fossil fuel related companies, but also the review commissioned from our advisors Arlene Close into possible environmental, social and corporate governance funds, ESG funds, which will be considered for potential investment during the 21-22 financial year. I'm pleased to second the motion to note the report.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I see no requests to speak on this. So, Councillor Samuel, do you wish to sum up or have you?
Nothing to add, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. We'll move straight to the vote then, please. Can you record any votes against accepting this report? Any votes against? Are there any abstentions? So then the report has been unanimously accepted. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9, we have the LGA new model code of conduct, and I invite Councillor Guy to move the motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Council Code of Conduct is an important part of our constitution as a council. It sets out our standards and behaviours that we expect our councillors to adhere to, and designed to protect our democratic role, encourage good conduct and safeguard the public's trust in local government. All councils are required to have a local council code of conduct. The proposal before you today is to adopt the new model code of conduct, which has been proposed and produced by the Local Government Association, with some minor local changes outlined in paragraph 2.5 of the report and schedule 1 of the appendix. I'd like to thank the members of the Standards Committee for their hard work in looking ahead at this code of conduct and recommending this report. I would particularly like to draw colleagues' attention to the joint statement on page 1 of the appendix and endorse the call for individuals from a range of backgrounds and circumstances to be putting themselves forward to become councillors. I therefore move the recommendation to Council on the 22nd July that Council approves the draft code of conduct attached to appendix 1 as printed in recommendation 2.1. I therefore move. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Hounsell, would you like to second this motion?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This proposal to adopt the LGA new model code of conduct with minor changes as indicated
has been considered by the Standards Committee, which gives its unanimous support for the proposal. The Standards Committee is undertaken to conduct an annual review of our Code of Conduct, which will follow the Local Government Association's own review. Members of the public will note that the proposed code for BAMES goes even further than the LGA model code in regard to gifts and hospitality by continuing with the threshold of £25 rather than the £50 limit in the LGA model code. May I take this opportunity to remind all councillors to keep the register of interests up to date. I am pleased to second this motion approving the draft code of conduct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hansel. I have Councillor Jackson who wishes to speak, please. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I would like to support this recommendation that we adopt this code of conduct. I spent a number of years on the Standards Committee, and I know just how hard people work who are associated with it, especially what perhaps is not appreciated always, how many lay members there are who are not people who are not councillors, parish councillors, people from outside, and they make most immensely valuable contribution without getting much in the way of thanks, except maybe now it's going to be every year with the production of this report. So I think we should also say thank you to their hard work, as well as of course, as usual, thank you to the officers and their conscientious way of dealing with things. I've read it through very carefully. Things have changed a great deal, especially as a number of the offences or aspects of the code which were previously included are now criminal offences and are rightly not included in this overview. So although the goalposts perhaps have moved a little bit, it's still obviously very important that we stick to this code. The only question I would just like to put on the table, perhaps for next year's review, we have departed from an age where we would have a councillor appear before the Standards Committee because they've been shouting at a resident in a field of turnips somewhere in the Chew Valley or wherever. And now we have the problem of cyber bullying, trolling, and so on, and probably ways of terrorizing people that I can barely imagine because my IT skills are not very great. So I'm just wondering if next year maybe the committee might consider whether this code as we have it now covers the dimensions of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. I'm very happy to support this motion and all that is recommended in it. It's a very important piece of work. What I would ask is maybe that we should take it a bit further, particularly in light of how little housing there is for many people across Bath and North East Somerset, and that all councillors should actually register how much property they own inside and outside of BAMES, as housing for many people is a place that many people cannot have. So I just wonder if we could take that forward, please.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Pritchard.
Flippant, I know, but I want to assure Councillor Jackson that I have never shouted at any of my residents in a turnip field in Chew Valley.
Thank you for those pearls of wisdom, Councillor Pritchard. Right, so we go back to Councillor Guy to sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, all points are noted, including the turnip field comments, but as it's very hot, we'll move straight to the vote, if that's okay. Thank you.
Excellent idea, Councillor Guy. Can I have any votes against this motion, please? Listed in the chat. Any votes against? Can I have any votes to abstain? No, then the motion is carried unanimously. Right, agenda item 10, the appointment of Legal and Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer. Councillor Guy, would you like to move, please?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased to move the recommendation to appoint Michael Hewitt to the post of Head of Legal and Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer. This is a new post in the Council's senior management structure. It follows the creation of the new post of Chief Operating Officer and the reorganisation of the Director portfolios to enable delivery of the corporate plan. Thank you to those colleagues and officers who took part in the recruitment process, and I would draw colleagues' attention to paragraph 5.3 to 5.5 of the report, which outlined how the recruitment process was carried out. Michael Hewitt is a very experienced solicitor with over 20 years legal practice in local government under his belt. The Restructuring Implementation Committee considered that he demonstrated the necessary vision, leadership skills, experience to meet the future needs of the council and the challenges we all face ahead. I therefore move to recommend to Council on the 22nd of July that Council approves the appointment of the Head of Legal and Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer to Michael Hewitt on the salary of £80,000 per annum from July the 23rd, as printed in recommendation 2.1. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Walker, would you like to second this?
I would. I'm very delighted to second Michael Hewitt to the appointment of Head of Legal and Democratic Services and the Monitoring Officer. As stated in the report, 3 candidates were shortlisted for virtual interviews. The panel was given a very difficult choice to make. We, the panel, met once virtually and twice in person. On the 8th of July, after careful consideration, it was agreed to appoint Michael. And as Councillor Guy said, Michael does have over 20 years of experience. He's worked for this authority for 6 years, and I would like to congratulate him on the appointment.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, we're a small but very prestigious authority, so you can imagine that this post attracted a very high calibre of candidates. And so Michael has done extremely well to win the appointments, and I congratulate him, and we as the Conservative group look forward to working with him in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Moss.
Yes, as the other member of the RIC panel, again, congratulations to Michael on the appointment. I think we've made a good choice to this post. And as Karen, Vic, and Kevin said, it was an exhausting process, doing interviews and the rest. I would also have to point out, of course, that one of the things in the inbox, which Michael is very well aware of, is, of course, the review of the Constitution. And I think it was very brave of him to accept the post using the Yes Minister version of the word brave. But congratulations, Michael.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor Guy, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We can just move to the vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now go to the vote? Any of you who wish to vote against this motion, please indicate now in the chat. Any of you who wish to abstain, please vote now. Motion is unanimously carried. Thank you and congratulations to Michael. Okay, we now go on to agenda item 11, and this is a Labour motion connected with Commonwealth veterans. Councillor Johnson, would you like to move, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move to recommend to Council on 22nd of July this motion on Commonwealth veterans. Now, some of you might be sat there wondering why we have decided to bring this motion before you now, especially when the government's own consultation finished on the 7th of July 2021. Unfortunately, when the Labour group originally tabled this motion ready for the March meeting of Council, we suddenly found ourselves in Purda. This was then followed by the AGM of the Council, where this motion couldn't be heard due to its political nature. However, after all those months, we as a group still consider this motion just as important now as it was before the consultation closed. The government consultation proposed that Commonwealth personnel who have served a minimum of 12 years will no longer have to pay immigration fees to continue calling this country home, and they sought feedback on this proposal. This motion makes it clear that this proposal from the government isn't good enough and doesn't go far enough. We firmly believe that fees should be abolished after 4 years of service, aligning with when personnel are legally eligible to claim indefinite leave to remain. The proposals also do nothing to address the fees faced by the families of Commonwealth personnel. This is despite the integral support they provide to an effective armed forces. Families also experience the same stresses, strains, and sacrifices of service life as our soldiers, sailors, and airmen and women, including accompanying them on postings and supporting them through deployments. The steps set out in this motion make it clear that this council supports those men and women who have fought and served our country for the protection of not only the UK, but those abroad as well. I cannot urge you enough to vote for this motion as it is presented to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I believe Councillor Jackson will be seconding this, not Councillor Moss. Councillor Jackson, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'm delighted to second this motion. Sadly, there is a long history of veterans being betrayed by the governments they have risked their lives to protect. Whether we think of the sailors who defeated the Armada being left to starve in 1590 by Elizabeth I, whether they were English, Irish, Dutch, or of colour, or the Nagaland warriors who were promised their independence if they helped repulse the Japanese, but were betrayed in 1947 when Nagaland was annexed to India. The story of the Gurkhas is too well known, but I don't think that even Joanna Lumley could reverse the Home Office's hostile environment for Commonwealth citizens. Indeed, some of the Windrush generation are actually former RAF personnel and so hit twice. I've been in Bangalore on Remembrance Sunday and was humbled by the spirit of the veterans there that I was privileged to meet, the veterans from World War II and the Malaya campaign. It was the Commonwealth spirit which has been undermined so much by these unfair charges. If the military government, which this council has supported and put into concrete measures in this area, means anything, we should make sure that these costs are reduced or removed by our actions. Why are the Roman villas in the Radstock area? After 25 years service in the Roman army, a soldier could automatically get Roman citizenship and a plot of land to own and cultivate in a colony or a Roman settlement. Surely 2,000 years on, we can progress to something better than that. So I'd urge you to pass this resolution, which is very close to the Labour Party heart. There, if I've got half a minute, there are 2 new windows in Scarborough Station. Poet Wilfred Owen, Dum est pro patri moriri is his most famous poem, a sarcastic play on the fact that there's this Latin saying that it's a gentle and decent thing to do to die for your country. I feel that if he were alive now, Wilfred Owen would be adding another
1 minute remaining
at these charges, and therefore I hope that you'll support this resolution, members of council, to get these charges reduced.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, as a veteran myself, I've served alongside many members of the Commonwealth on board HMS Illustrious was my last ship I was on, and I can categorically say that that they work as hard as anybody, and it's a pleasure to have been served alongside them, and I class them as friends and colleagues. So I can do nothing but fully support this Labour motion, and I've spoken to Councillor Moss about this, but I will happily second it at the physical meeting tomorrow alongside the Labour members.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Johnson, do you wish to sum up?
I don't think I have anything further to add. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. We will go straight to the vote. Any votes against this motion? Please record them now. Any abstentions?
Yes, Chair, I wish to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Are there any other abstentions? No, the motion is passed. Thank you. Right, we will move on now to agenda item 12, the Conservative motion on the memorial for COVID victims in Baines. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Conservative group wished to table this motion tonight in recognition of all those people in Bath and North East Somerset who have tragically lost their lives to COVID-19 over the course of the pandemic. It also recognised all the key workers and the healthcare staff who have done so much to keep us safe during the past 18 months. As our community begins to emerge from the pandemic, we must remember that people are still grieving, and we should do all we can to show them that they are not alone. We believe that a suitable memorial, as outlined in the motion, would have been a fitting tribute to all those that we've lost and a source of comfort to those who remain. I then notice that the Labour Party have chosen to make an amendment. In that they say full independent inquiry should be called of the handling of the COVID crisis to ensure any mistakes are not repeated. Now, let me tell you that this is already being conducted by the government. So this is a nonsense, and it pollutes the intention of what was a motion that could have received cross-party support, and it was given in a spirit of sincerity. Because of this, Madam Chairman, I am choosing to withdraw the motion. Thank you.
I see Councillor Pritchard. Right, so Councillor, the motion is withdrawn. We will move on to agenda item 13, the cross-party motion on safety for women. And I invite Councillor Romero to move the recommendation, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for chairing our meetings of women councillors too. I would also like to thank all the women councillors who came together in shock following the murder of Sarah Everard on the 3rd of March 2021. This was a reaction not just to the murder, but to the sense that somehow Sarah Everard had brought this upon herself by walking home alone after dark from a friend's house. Why has it been pressed on women that they must not invite attack? Why shouldn't women feel safe whatever time of day or night, during daylight or in the dark? Somehow it has become accepted that it is women's fault if they become victims. This is not right, and it must stop. We, the women councillors of Bath and North East Somerset Council, believe this regardless of our political party. We want this council to do its part and to make sure in all its decisions it is not putting more risk on women. I know that this may seem like a tough ask when budgets are tight, but what we are asking for may not cost a lot, and it may already be budgeted for. It may be as simple as replacing broken lighting in car parks sooner rather than a bit later, or perhaps not agreeing a planning application with dark alleyways within. I don't think we are asking for something unachievable or unreasonable, just for the council to help all women go about our ordinary lives without fear. I hope all in this chamber can agree on this, if nothing else, and will all vote for this motion to work together on making Bath and North East Somerset a safer place for women. Thank you. I move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Hardman, I believe you'd like to second this.
Yes. The revulsion felt nationally after the death of Sarah Everard in March prompted female councillors in Baines to action. A series of cross-party meetings of female councillors was held, as Dina has already said, which is how this motion came into being. You'll notice that it states we believe everyone should have the right to be safe from violence and harassment on the streets. It also acknowledges it's not just women who are at risk, but any individual who may be vulnerable to attack for different reasons. While recognising that far more men than women are victims of physical assault, women are much more likely to fall victim to sexual violence. In the year ending March 2020, the Office for National Statistics estimated that 4.9 million women had been victims of sexual assault in their lives, including 1.4 million who had been raped or had faced attempted rape. Sexual assault is most common among younger women, with about 1 in 10 people aged 16 to 24 having been a victim in the past year. 1 in 40 women said they had been victims of rape in the past year. 1 in 5 women had been victim of stalking since the age of 16. The vast majority of sexual offences remain unsolved. Indeed, most are not even reported to police. Women feel too embarrassed to report rape. They think the police will not help, and also they think they won't be believed. Figures of sexual harassment are recently varying. A recent poll found that 7 out of 10 women had experienced some form of sexual harassment in public. The number was nearly 9 out of 10 for younger women. Most women have experienced catcalling, been groped or faced unwelcome touching. A third have been followed. 1 in 5 have faced indecent exposure. Women live in fear. They change their behaviour to avoid being out at night on their own and try to make themselves safe. Sarah Efford did everything women are told to do. She was wearing trainers, bright clothing, phoned a partner, walked on brightly lit streets, yet still she fell victim to violence.
1 minute remaining.
As a society, we must stop laying all the responsibility for keeping safe on women. And I do understand the government has made some announcements today, but there are things this council can and should do. Council departments responsible for public spaces have been asked to review lighting, CCTV provision, and other means to improve safety. We want changes to take place, and we also request an update on these matters to check what progress has been made. We don't want this issue to be something that causes an outpouring of grief before being forgotten. I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harden. Do I have any other speakers, please? Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much for so many women coming together to support this motion. We all need to recognise the level of violence that surrounds many in daily life is not acceptable. All sections of society need to call out violence against women and against any human being, whatever their gender. We have to keep asking the question, what kind of world do we want to live in? How do we make sure it is fair and safe for everyone to go about their daily lives? This motion is an opportunity for all of us to call out violence, harassment, and intimidation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Are there any other speakers? I invite Councillor Romero to sum up then, please.
I have little to add, but I'd just like to thank both Liz and Joe for their comments, and I'd like to move to the vote.
Thank you. Are there any councillors who wish to vote against this motion, please? Can you signify? Are there any councillors who wish to abstain from this motion? Then I am delighted to say that this motion has unanimously been supported. Thank you very much, all councillors. That is fantastic. Thank you. Right, we have, I believe, no questions or statements from councillors, and therefore we will close the meeting. Do please remember that this was an informal meeting. All the decisions tonight are in preparation to advise the live meeting tomorrow. Live meeting will be for quoracy only in the interest of social distancing.